What's up guys, and welcome back to another video covering Pokemon Sun and Moon. Today we're going to go straight into speculation once again, not for Mega Evolutions this time though, but about the gyms and the Elite Four, and I guess the champion as well, for the region or for the game in Sun and Moon in general. I'm going to be talking about what typings we've seen for the gyms and the Elite Four and such, and sort of theorising on what they might decide to use next, and also explaining what I would like to see and my thoughts behind it. So first, if we look at the sort of what we've had in the past, so over the first 6 generations, what types we had for all of the gyms. Well, I can tell you, the normal type has had 3 gyms based on it. Grass is 3, fire is 2, water 4, electric 5, so it's appeared in almost every generation. Ground 2, rock 4, well when I say generation I mean region, so Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, Unova and Kalos, so that's 6 regions there. Obviously some regions appear twice in one generation, etc. So ground 2 times, rock 4 times, fighting 4 times, flying type 3 times, poison twice, psychic 3 times, ghost 2 times. The dark type has never had a gym, never. Bug type 3 times, steel twice, ice type 4 times, dragon twice, and fairy just the 1 time because obviously it's only been in 1 generation. So or 1 region I should say. What might we see for generation? To add on to that as well, there was 1 gym in generation 5 in the first set of games which was either grass, fire, or water depending on which starter you chose. I can't really class that as grass, fire, and water as each, but it's just sort of like a general gym. So what might we be seeing in terms of gyms for Sun and Moon? What would we want to see? Well, I definitely want to see a dark type gym. It's been this will be the 7th generation now, the 7th region. They've got to do a dark type gym. I mean, come on, even if it's the last gym, once you've got enough dark type Pokemon adding in, it would just make sense. It feels weird not to have a dark type gym, especially since, for example, electric, we've had 5 of them. Ice 4, rock fighting 4 times. I can understand it for a common type like electric, but a fighting type gym or an ice type gym 4 times, it's a bit over the top, I'd say. Other ones we might see, or might likely to see, is a fire type gym. We have not seen a fire type gym since Hoenn. Obviously the 2 we have are Blaine in the Kanto region and also Flannery in the Hoenn region, so I definitely expect to see a fire type gym, especially since the region looks based on Hawaii, which is hot and has volcanoes and such, so fire type gym would fit in nicely there. Also, gyms we haven't seen since Generation 4 include the Steel type gym, because obviously we had Byron back then, and then the Ghost type gym, since the last time we saw it was with Fantina in Sinnoh. So those 2 are likely to appear as well. Maybe not hugely likely since they're not sort of common types, but the fire type obviously is a very common type, and it's only got 2 gyms so far, so it definitely deserves another one. Gyms we're really unlikely to see are gyms that maybe appeared in the last games in X, Y. So those, electric possibly might not make an appearance again. Rock fighting, they were both seen in X and Y in Kalos, so there was the grass type. Psychic as well, and bug. Bug's a possibility to return anyway, since it has appeared in a good few of them. I suppose rock, since rock is sort of a stable one. Fairy is one of the gyms that appeared in X and Y, but I definitely expect to see a fairy type gym in this in the Sun and Moon region, not because obviously we haven't seen it for a while, but because just to get another fairy type gym on the board. They might decide not to do it because obviously they've just had sort of the fairy type introduced and they just did a whole thing about it, so they might decide to put it on the back burner now and just pretend it's a normal type. Or they could say let's add some more dedication to it maybe. So I've got a list here of 8 gyms that are sort of I'm not saying these are the 8 gyms that are going to be in Sun and Moon, but these are the 8 gyms that I feel are very likely to appear in Sun and Moon, or 8 of the gyms that are likely to. Dark, definitely. I feel like the dark type's just got to come along, why not? Fire, as I've already mentioned, it would fit with the region theme, it would seem, and we haven't seen it since Generation 3, so it would fit very well. I said Generation 3, the 3rd region. Steel as well, maybe a possibility, as well as Ghost, since we haven't seen them since Generation 4, and then Fairy I've mentioned too. I feel like a Dragon type gym is possible to come back as well. We've seen 2 of them already in Generation 2 in Johto, as well as in Generation 5 in Unova, so it's likely that a Dragon type gym does appear again, since they'd like to have it as the last gym, have it be a real challenge. That's a possibility. It could return as well, since it is a pretty strong type and it would make a lot of sense. And then 2 other types that here are normal. We haven't seen a normal gym since Generation 5, I think in the first set of games actually, so we haven't seen it for a bit of a long while. And also ground type gym, again we haven't seen that since Generation 5, so it's a possibility it returns. But the types I've chosen sort of they work together well in my opinion. Of course, we have Dark and Fire, they sort of ghosty, not ghosty types, if you get what I mean. Dark and Fire work together well, as does Dragon, that goes with those. And then also you can add Ghost into those 4, and then you've got Fairy, Normal, Steel and Ground, which sort of fit into another category. Not in thematic categories, I'm thinking here, not like, oh yeah, these are special types, whatever. I'm thinking of thematic categories here. But I feel like those 8 types would be a possible, Dark, Steel, Fire, Ghost, Fairy, Dragon, Normal, Ground. There's a good mix there, not being biased to one type particularly. And I feel like, those are 8 gyms that are possible to appear in Sun and Moon. So then if we move on to the Elite 4. What types have we seen? Obviously there's a lot less, since there's only 4 Elite 4 members per region, whereas there's 8 gyms, so there's a lot less we have to actually see here. But the types that we have been in the Elite 4, we've had 2 Fire type users in the Elite 4, 1 Water type user, 1 Ground, 3 Fighting, 1 Poison, 3 Psychic, 3 Ghost, 3 Dark, 1 Bug, 1 Steel, 2 Ice and 3 Dragon. So there's no Normal, Grass, Electric, Rock, Flying or Fairy type users in the Elite 4s as of yet. So what types do we not expect to see? Well, of course we can pretty much rule out possibly maybe Dragon, Dark, Ghost, Psychic, Fighting, because they've all been seen 3 times, so at this point you may as well use ones you haven't used already, otherwise it gets a bit repetitive. In terms of what ones we have seen that we haven't seen for a while, the Ground type was last seen in Generation 4 when it was used by Bertha. The Poison type was last seen in Generation 4 when it was used by Koga in Heart Gold Soul Silver. Bug in Generation 4 when it was used by Aaron in Sinnoh. And then the Ice type has actually been used since Generation 3. It's been used twice, once in Gen 1 by Lorelei, and then again in Generation 3 by Glacia. So that's a possibility to come back again. But the types I definitely would hope to see, or would expect to see in the Elite 4 members in Sun and Moon to use, I definitely expect an Electric type user to come through, because it would just, especially if you haven't got a gym for it, that's a reason, you have that's the reason why, for example, Electric is possibly used more in gyms, because obviously it's not the strongest type, it has a clean weakness in terms of the Ground type move, but so it's used in gyms, and obviously they don't want to use it for the Elite 4. But I would love to see it as an Elite 4 user, because it's got you've got plenty of ideas to actually counter the Ground type vulnerability. Electric flying types, electric types, with I don't know, air balloon maybe. I don't know, but you guys get the idea there. I would love to see an electric type Elite 4 user, as well as a Grass type user as well, because we haven't seen one of those either, and it would make a lot of sense. We saw a Water type user in Generation 6, and we saw 2 Fire type users so far in. We had, I can't remember his name, Flint in Generation 4, as well as, who else has used Fire types in the Elite 4? It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite remember. Oh well, but you guys get the idea there. Then after that, we've had Water and Fire is what I'm meaning here, so Grass would be the next logical step, and there's a lot of powerful Grass types out there. Then we have the Fairy type. I really feel like a Fairy type Elite 4 member is going to come, especially if you don't have a Fairy type gym. Because that way, obviously, no gym, so it means you can use a type for Elite 4. We had a gym for Fairy type in X and Y, and it was the main reason they didn't use Fairy type as one of the Elite 4 members in X and Y is because obviously you want to have it introduced fairly, or not introduced, but a good amount of usage in the main storyline. You don't want to say, oh yeah, right at the end battle, here's some more cool Fairy types. Did you see these? Plus, obviously, Diantha did use. She had the Fairy type aura around her, I guess. Her Mega Gardevoir is part Fairy type, so that makes a lot of sense there. Why they didn't use it for an Elite 4 member, but I would love to see an Elite 4 member be purely Fairy type based in Generation 7. It'd be really cool, I think, just to throw out all these powerful Fairy types, all these dual types. You guys get the idea there. Then I would love, the last two obviously aren't as common, but neither of them have been used before, and that's the Rock type and the Flying type. You could argue that the Rock type has been used since Bruno in Generation 1, or way back when, in Generation 1 and 3, when there weren't many fighting types for him to use, I guess. In that Dex, he used Onyx and such, so I guess you could argue it was used a bit there. But yeah, it's a possibility for it to come back as a full member, I guess. And a flying type Elite Four member, yes, it sounds a bit weird since flying isn't really a pure type, it's usually a secondary type. But we have had it for gyms before. We've had, was it 3 gyms? It's been used in Winona, Skylar, and I think in Generation 7, was it? Or Generation 6 rather. I don't know, but it's used in 3 gyms. So yeah, it's certainly a possibility for an Elite Four member to use it, because you could have all these fire flying, grass flying, and water flying. Just have it'd be a very varied Elite Four member, but it would also have a clear weakness in terms of part flying type. But it would still be very varied, and you'd be able to actually make, either you wouldn't be able to abuse it as easily, because say you've got an electric type, great, you've got an electric type, oh wait, grass flying comes along, so you're already neutral against that. Or maybe maybe you've got your starter Pokemon that's got Thunder Punch, maybe it's a fire type with Thunder Punch, but then obviously other types come along. If it's varied, of course, it would make it a bit of a harder battle. It would be like a varied gym Elite Four member, as well as having this pure type, this type feeling. But we also have some other types, of course. We could have some types we haven't seen before. Normal is the one I'm thinking of here. We haven't seen a normal type Elite Four member. The reason we might not actually see it in Generation 7 is because normal is a very weak type. Obviously it's only weak to 1, but it has no strengths is the main thing, so why it's a weak type. So that's the reason we might not see it, because obviously it would just be pretty easy just to roll through with a fighting type member and not be able to be touched, basically. And of course we can see some other Elite Four types we haven't actually seen before, we haven't seen for a while, particularly the Ice type, not seen in Generation 3. Maybe the Bug type makes a return. I'm not sure how successful they thought it was with Aaron being a Bug type user back in Generation 4. I liked it, but of course he can be fairly easy to defeat once you've got a Fire type moving and just roll through the walls, since they don't have particularly high defences. And of course Poison and Ground are 2 other possibilities, because we haven't seen them since Generation 4 either. And they're both sort of fairly strong types, so... But, Electric and Grass, definitely want to see those, as well as particularly Fairy as well. And then the last one's sort of iffy. They could bring back a type they've seen before, or add Normal, be super crazy like that, but I don't think it'd work too well. But we're definitely going to see some new type Elite Four members, I think, in Sun and Moon in Generation 7. So then we move on to the Champion. Now, usually the Champion is a varied user, for example, Blue... In Generation 1, you used his whole team that was sort of the opposite of your team almost, with his starter Pokemon and stuff like that. But of course, as we go on, they have introduced champions that have been sort of, use a single type. For example, in Generation 2, your champion is Lance there, and he's a Dragon type user, so it's a pure Dragon, fully Dragons. So he's gone from Elite Four to Champion. Then in Generation 3, we had first Steven, who was a Steel type user, and then we had Wallace, who was a Water type user. And then of course in Generation 5 we also had Iris as the champion in the second set of games, who was a Dragon type user again. So what are we likely to see? Well, I would most likely think it's going to be a varied very champion to use all the types, because otherwise it makes it a bit too easy. If you've got a really strong, say they use Dragon type again, say you've got a really strong Fairy type, boom, you're just going to wreck through them, and it's not going to be a challenge at all. Of course, it could be a really hard challenge. For example, back in Generation 3, when you had Wallace as the champion in Emerald, if you chose Blaziken and you didn't have a strong sort of Grass type or Electric type on your team, you could really struggle with him sometimes, because obviously generally your starter is the one you power up the most. So I think it's only fair to have it be a varied champion. Of course, they could make it particular type. If they were to do that, what would the type be? Well, it's not going to be Dragon again. I very much doubt it'd be Dragon again, because again, just deja vu. It could be any other type though, really, even Water and Steel. But I think if it were to be one type, I think it'd be the Fire type, because as I mentioned, the region's based on Hawaii, so it would make a lot of sense. It would fit thematically, especially if, for example, the Pokemon League is set in a volcano of some sort, volcanic design. It would make a lot of sense for the champion to use Fire types. And of course, we haven't seen it before, and it wouldn't really work if you had a Fire type gym, but it would still work as a champion. Of course, if you picked the Water type starter, you would have a very easy time. If you pick the Grass type starter, you might have a harder one. So that's the only reason I think they won't do it. I think it will be a varied champion, but of course it's a possibility. So that's pretty much, we've gone through them all, we speculated over all of them, and I've given you my thoughts. I would love to see, for example, go back to gyms, love to see a Dark type gym and a Fire type gym to return again, because we haven't seen them in ages, or at all in Dark's case. Elite Four members, Electric and Grass are my two main picks for those. I really want to see Elite Four members using those two types because they haven't been seen before. And a champion, really, I want a varied champion just to give it sort of a very rounded challenge, I guess, a very fair challenge, you know, because as I mentioned, if there's a fire type, if you chose the water type starter, you're going to have a very easy time. So a varied champion just to give us every starter equal weighting, basically. But that's it from me. But you can, surely let me know what you think down below in the comments section, because what gym type do you want to see in Sun and Moon? Do you want to see Dark type gym? Do you want to see a Fire type gym? And also, what Elite Four members do you want to see? Do you want to see them using Electric and Grass like I suggested, or do you want to see them really, similar to Generation 5 where you had like Dark, Psychic, Ghost, and Fighting, like a quad like that? Let me know what you think down below about all those three categories. But for now, this is going to be it for me for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.